I want to talk about my buddy McDonato. You're going to probably notice that he's from the New England area. He has a 12-year-old as his producer, who's also on mic quite a bit.
If it's a bit, it's brilliant.
The McDonato Show starts now. Hey folks, how you doing there? Welcome to another episode of the McDonato Show. Of course, your host, McDonato, and I am recording from my, my apartment bunker down here in Swansea, just trying to stay safe from the corona. And the reason we did a clip show last week is we've been setting up so Danny actually replicated the booth that he had in the studio, in his home studio. So there's Danny.
It was a real pain. Also, hi, I'm Danny, the other guy.
Yeah, he's the other guy. He's a great kid, great producer. But you know what, Danny? And I have another monitor, which is great. I can see him. He can see me. And we're like 30 miles apart. But I can see him. It's just like we're in the same room together. It's amazing, the technology. But what I sort of discovered watching the clip show we did last week, you can see really the improvements over time with the audio, the video. You're figuring it out, Danny. So great job.
Thank you.
Plugs are on the screen. We have a great guest coming. I am so excited about this guest. We're going to bring it on very shortly. This is going to be a fantastic interview. But, of course, as we always do, start the show, want to give special thanks to all those emergency responders out there who have been keeping us safe, before the corona thing, but even still. Who is it, Danny? It's the fire, hazmat, law enforcement, narcotics agency, keep that fentanyl off the street, military, army, Navy, Air Force, Marines. All the three-letter agencies, and by the way, our guest today is from one of those.
And also Coast Guard counts.
He's from the ATF, and I'm going to talk to him about that. I'm a little confused about what ATF does, but anyways. But certainly the CDC, right, Danny?
Yes.
The other ones keeping us safe, and Dr. Fauci, Dr. Birx, and all of them. So it's great. And here's the thing. We're just trying to do what we can during this time. We're just a stupid show, right? And we do some stupid stuff. And, we just try to, oh, jeez. All right. Sorry about that, folks. Little accident there with my companion down on my bunker. Speaking of stupid stuff. But we just try to do what we can, maybe to bring some laughter. Right?
Yeah.
To the folks, emergency responders, and just kind of entertain them. But more importantly, some specifics. I know, Danny, you and your mom and dad and Andy, you're supporting a firefighter from your hometown, right?
Yes.
Through this thing that you do on Facebook, sending him letters and notes, and I think you drew some pictures. Apparently. Just to let them know, hey, we're thinking about you. And the other thing, remember the Hope for Holte campaign?
Yeah.
Turns out, as of last night, we hit our goal. Yeah. Can you bring it up there, Danny? The website, just real quick? Yeah. So, the Hope for Holte Foundation, we hit a $2,500 goal. We had an anonymous donation, and then Mr. Chris Capita, he came in and donated. So, I was texting Helen earlier today saying, we finally did it. Thank God. So, that's something we tried to do. I can take it down, Danny. Take it down.
Oh, okay.
And here's the other thing. We have another little project, actually a big project brewing. I'm in this Facebook group called the Ruck for the Fallen. They just hit 10,000 followers, and they support, firefighters, military, all those. They really do a lot of work on PTSD and trying to help those suffering with that. And so more to come. I've been in touch with the founder there, and I can't wait to get that going. Go ahead and take that down, Danny. Yeah. All right, there we go. So, doing what we can. to support. And before we bring on our guest, real quick, I want to give... Oh, what happened, Dan?
I have no clue.
Special thanks. I want to give a special thanks to one of our former guests, Jesse Taylor. He's an explosives expert, and he sent Danny and me these great shirts. Danny's got one on. Show it there, Danny. And he also got, show you your little stick of dynamite, Danny. This is a stick of dynamite from a show that Jesse did on Mythbusters. You can see it's signed by Adam Savage and Jamie Heineman.
That's pretty good. It's really cool.
It's pretty awesome. Thank you so much, Jesse. And it's pretty appropriate that we're talking about homemade explosives because we're going to bring on our guest now because he has written a book. I'm going to bring it up here, which is called Burn, Boston Burn. And it's basically about the largest arson case in U.S. history. And it's fascinating. So without further ado, I'm going to bring him on. Mr. Wayne Miller. Wayne, are you there?
Good morning.
There you are, sir. Keeping yourself safe.
Hashtag
Protecting myself
spread.
from the viruses on the computer, you know?
Yeah, a lot of viruses on the computer. A lot of them out there. So, yeah, we do what we can to stay safe. Sir, thank you so much for calling in. Again, we wanted to do this live in studio earlier on, but situation as it is, couldn't do it. But the book, again, is called Burn, Boston Burn. Your website, burnbostonburn.com. And we'll bring it up full screen so everyone can get a good image of it. But like I said, it's a fascinating book. We're going to get into all that. But before that, I just want to learn a little bit about you, sir. Now, you are a former special agent with the ATF and now an author. So kind of tell us about your background in that and how you got into writing books.
Sure. I got into criminal justice through Bryant College, which is now Bryant University down in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
And I did some undercover work while I was in college for the state of Rhode Island. And because of that undercover work, I ended up working for Dennis PD for a summer, one of those summer cops, but not in uniform. I worked undercover the entire summer, buying drugs off the streets.
By the way, real quick, Dennis, that's where your papa, they have a cottage down there, Dennis, on the Cape. Beautiful. Yeah, anyway, sorry, go ahead, sir.
Because of that, I ended up getting on ATF back in 1976.
All right.
Long time ago. And I worked in Boston office my whole 25 years. I was buying guns on the street my first 4 years. I had a 46 machine gun case. I know where I was the night Elvis died in August of 1977. I was in a bar in Hyde Park trying to buy guns.
All right.
And I got into the arson business. ATF got serious about doing fires around 1980. And Boston formed an arson task force in 82. And I volunteered for the arson task force. And I worked 20 more years there doing fires.
Fantastic. So you have a lot of experience and, of course, more recently gotten into writing. And, again, we're going to get into the book here shortly. I have a question, though. It's always kind of bothered me. So the ATF, again, we support all the three-letter agencies. But I'm always confused, and maybe you can give me some insight. How do those come together? So you have alcohol, tobacco, and firearm. I get the alcohol. You go to the bar, have a few drinks. Tobacco, you go have a cigarette. Where's the firearms come in? How does that, happen?
It goes all the way back to 1790, believe it or not.
Wow.
And it was a regulatory, a taxing thing. You tax the alcohol, you tax
the money.
And then the firearms eventually. Certain firearms are taxed, especially like if you want, you could buy an automatic weapon, but you have to pay the tax, as long as your state law lets you buy it, too. But and explosives, they all get taxed, and that's why it happened. And then you had the criminal side that enforced those particular laws. Like if you brought a truckload of cigarettes from North Carolina, the taxes weren't being paid if you brought them up here to Massachusetts. So we could enforce that particular law. And then the firearms got in there because of the Al Capone era in Chicago.
Yep.
They started with they passed certain laws around that time to curb some of the gun violence. And that all got together with ATF.
So it's kind of all about the money, and is that kind of how remember the cigarettes have the state stamp? That goes back to the Stamp Act a long time ago, all about the money.
Yes.
But then how did ATF get into investigating arson? Just kind of curious. Again, we're getting into the book, but just get your background. How did that sort of happen?
Still in a convoluted sort of way.
Okay.
ATF had the explosive jurisdiction, bombs and just things that explode, period. And they took that if you poured some gasoline in your studio there, a little bit of gasoline, could that explode? So that was a fire and an explosion, possibly.
Okay. Yep.
And then in 1982, President Reagan changed the federal law that read, if you damage or destroy a building by means of explosive, he added 2 words, or fire. And jurisdiction was given to ATF to investigate fires affecting interstate commerce. All businesses virtually affect interstate commerce.
Yeah, you mentioned Reagan, and you mentioned in the book that he wanted to abolish the ATF, right, at one point?
Yes, he did. We're up there on the stage with him for doing protection details, and he's talking about abolishing ATF, you know.
Yeah.
It's kind of a strange feeling when you're standing there and he's talking about you losing your job.
Oh, no kidding. No kidding. Anyways, great background, and this book, I want to get into it now because it's fantastic. It's obviously written from your perspective because you were involved. You were a special agent on the case. So I want to talk about it. Now, I will admit, I did not read the book.
Okay.
I listened to the book.
Listen to
Yeah, because you have it on Audible, right?
Yes.
Was it Chris Montero? Am I saying the name correctly?
Grew up in Fall River area.
Hey, Fall River. Is that Danny?
Hey.
Yeah, that was great. So I listened to it, but thank you for sending a copy. I have looked through it, but it's great. And I just want to give my take on sort of the overall thing, but then let you talk. But here's kind of the gist. Basically, back in the early, I think it's 1980, the state had this Prop 2.5. And we get these all the time on elections, like proposition, this and that. But bottom line is it cut local taxes, and as a result, that a lot of essential, municipal services, including firehouses, were being shut down. And so some guys said, we don't like this, so we're going to make it necessary for firehouses to be opened up. And so they start fire. And I'm not giving anything away. This is history, right? But that's basically the gist. So give us your take on it and kind of how this book started to unfold.
It just so happened that the arson task force in Boston was formed the same 2-week period that these guys started setting their fires back in 82. And they ramped up doing their fires through the spring and summer. And we're talking 4 to 7 fires per night without setting. And multiple alarm fires. Boston sees multiple alarm fires now maybe twice a month.
Yeah.
These guys were getting multiple alarm fires twice in a day.
Oh.
And it happened throughout the entire summer. And I was working this thing daily with the Boston Arson Task Force, the Boston Arson Squad, and ATF joined together. And we had 8 agents in our group, and we're all working these fires. And eventually, we catch up to a Boston police officer involved, 2 other cops from Boston, a full-time Boston firefighter, and owner of a security. We catch up to these guys and prosecuted all of them, actually. But I thought about writing this book for 20-some odd years, and I didn't really have the time. I worked full-time after I left ATF. I was still a specialist in, I called myself a fire and explosion analyst. I've been in 43 states doing investigations now, and was pretty busy, so I didn't sit down and start typing until a Boston Globe reporter 2 years ago, January, contacted us and said, I'd like to do a story on this. When we sat down with him, he said, maybe I'll do a bigger project, meaning a book. The very next day I started typing because I didn't want his book to get out there before my book.
Okay.
And thank God for the Red Sox. It was 2018.
Yeah.
They won the championship, and they were on in the background every single night while I was typing away.
Oh, there you go. So it was a reporter that came along, a couple of years ago, said, hey, we should do this. And I want to get into some of the details because this is a very detailed recollection. I mean, you're talking about dates and specific people. And I mean, did you recall this from just records? I mean, this goes back, late 80s, early 90s. How did you have all those details at hand when you go back just a couple of years ago to write this book?
Sure. One of the arsonists, and this is really what makes the book what it is too. Greg Bemis, one of the arsonists.
Yep.
And Greg has a different name now because he ended up going to witness security because he testified in trial eventually.
Yeah.
But I interviewed Greg for 200 to 400 hours before he went to prison.
Okay.
He debriefed him and then prepped him for trial. And then when he went to prison, he single-spaced 166 typed pages.
Wow.
A journal. So what I talked to Greg about back in 1984 and 85, he wrote the same stuff in his journal.
Yeah.
And that's memorialized. So when you read the book, it sounds like fiction sometimes because there's a lot of dialogue.
Yeah. Yeah, and let me stop you there because I made a note of that. So first of all, you do have some amazing characters. Again, Bemis, you mentioned, who I noted, you mentioned in the epilogue. I wouldn't say you're friends, but you have a relationship with him after the thing happened, right?
I do. He contacted me through my website.
Yeah.
When I was getting close to finishing the book.
Yeah.
And we ended up with a lot of conversations. He added material.
Yeah.
He verified things. And his birthday is November.
Yeah.
And I took him out his birthday week.
Yeah.
And I've been in his living room.
Wow.
And it's a strange relationship. I mean.
Obviously, after he had served his time, right? And I think it was parole, correct?
Yes, he did over 10 years.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah. But then there's the other folks. You got Stackpole, Grabluski. I mean, these names. It's like someone scripted a movie. It's pretty crazy. And I wanted to ask you. So within the book, you mentioned it kind of reads like fiction, which I found interesting. So it's obviously nonfiction, but the way you wrote it, it reads like a novel. And you have some instances where the guys, they're getting ready to go set a fire and they're talking to each other. By the way, some salty language. So, just so you know. But that's how they talk, right?
That's how they talk. What are you going to do about it? You know?
But is that then from Mr. Bemis, what he said to you? Was that from like surveillance? Or did you just kind of make this up? I was just curious, how did you sort of write those passages with these guys talking to each other, where obviously no one like you was around at the time?
Correct. I mean, what Greg Bemis told me back in 84 and 85, and that's right during the time period when he finally confessed to us, is the same material that he wrote in his journal.
Okay.
And so that material comes directly out of his journal. He gave me full permission to use it. He gave it to me. So I have the journal. And I have a lot of records on from files on this. I have the indictments, newspaper articles, a lot of material.
Yeah, and again, what's fascinating, this isn't written by a person who, like a reporter who's investigating, did research. This is written from your perspective, and a lot of times you write in the first person because you were there, you were doing all that, and I thought it was fascinating. And the other thing. A couple things I just kind of made note here. I liked how you gave definitions of things like conspiracy and then entrapment. Like you said, no, here's what a conspiracy is, right? And here's what an entrapment is in different sections. That was kind of cool. I actually learned something.
I was writing this to have a broader audience in a sense.
Yeah.
I mean, housewives, some of them would read this book. Lay people being not in the military, police, fire. So some of the terminology I had to explain without boring you to death.
Yeah.
Conspiracy, I did it within about 4 or 5 pages.
Yep.
Entrapment, only a couple page or so. But I like putting a little history in there too when I talk about Meeting House Hill in Boston or certain areas. Giving a little bit of background so people can get a little more feel of what's going on.
Yeah. So again, that was really cool. And again, it just reads like a novel. And if you don't mind, there's a certain excerpt. I actually noted it here, if you don't mind, just a couple of sentences. This is from chapter 15. This is during the winter. And I'm just going to read a couple here because I, again, really thought this was cool. So this is Christmas time, and there's a couple sentences from chapter 15. This is how you started. You wrote, sorry. 'Twas the night of Christmas when Bemis finished his BHA shift at midnight. That's Boston. BHA is
Boston Housing.
Yeah, Boston Housing. Anyway, his BHA shift at midnight, and in the city, few creatures were stirring. Arsonists who wanted to burn a house. And then I'll skip ahead a little bit, but later you said, I wrote around 5 a.m., the fire was reported. It went to 4 alarms. The arsonists left 2 multiple alarm fire presents for the Boston Fire Department. Then they bedded down for a long winter's nap. Well, for a few days anyway. But again, the way you wrote that, it's sort of invoking 'twas the night before Christmas. I just thought it was so clever. Made it so interesting.
You know, I didn't even think of it. Just happened.
Yeah.
You know, I didn't think about that ahead of time. When I started that paragraph and that chapter, it just came out that way automatically.
Yeah. Well, it's great. And again, I like the little things. There was another, it's later in the book, you talk about the AUSA. That's the Assistant U.S. Attorney, right?
Yes.
Get that right? Anyways, you guys had to go to a prison, I think, to interview some people. And the AUSA, I guess, took some beer he was going to give to one of the prisoners and basically got caught, right?
You know, it was one of the funniest things that I can't help but laugh at. I mean, he stops in the general store in this little town upstate New York because we're visiting Bluesky in prison. And he goes in to buy something for him because he told him he promised he'd bring him some stuff.
Yeah.
But he never told us. So you have to go through the guards into the prison, and they open up his brief there, and he's got beer in his briefcase.
Yeah.
You know, we got called into the warden's office.
Yeah. And by the way, he said, I didn't bring drugs, didn't bring guns. Nothing wrong with beer, but I like how you said getting called to the warden's office. Like it was like going to the principal's office, and you thought you had to go to detention.
I thought he was going to lock us up.
So there's some of those sort of funny bits, again, within this horrific story, overall, everything that happened. But again, the way you wrote it from your perspective and just your personal experiences really makes it intriguing versus, again, just a dry sort of retelling of the things. I want to talk about the trial a little bit. I thought this was interesting. So they talk in the trial about an expert witness being called to sort of define an incendiary device. You know what that is, Danny?
No, I
Incendiary
no.
means it'll blow up.
Oh.
So he had to describe what that means, and there were certain definitions. Bottom line, these guys, as you read through the book, the devices were pretty crude. By all standards. These aren't like, wires and, clocks. And they were kind of crude, right? But they were effective.
Very simple device with a little bit of accelerant, matches, etc., a little bit more. And so simple, walking down the street in a paper bag, nobody'd ever see you, suspect anything.
Yeah.
But yet, extremely effective. I mean, 264 buildings they ended up burning.
Which is crazy. And again, just basically they put some Coleman fuel in a Ziploc bag. Yeah,
that's right.
It's in the book. I won't give it away. But, it was crazy. And then they did say in that part that, you have to be licensed to be able to make these things. Like our friend, Jesse Taylor. Danny, he's one of the few people in the country who has a license. He makes homemade explosives, has a whole range and everything. But we've learned a lot from him. But I just thought that was crazy. And then also in the trial, one of my favorite parts, I'm sure yours, you were on the stand, and you know what I'm going to ask. And you were asked by, I guess it was the defense attorney, what makes a special agent special? Remember that?
I certainly do.
Kind of tell the folks real quick. I don't want to give it away, but sort of what your response was, just quickly.
Originally I was going to start the whole book with that line.
Yeah.
Because really, in a few seconds, you have to answer, So what goes through your mind? Well, let's see. Are the bad guys who I catch, do they think I'm special? Or, how about my kids, my daughters?
Yeah.
A terrific father, ATF, a terrific father.
Yes.
So, what makes me special? I don't think I'm special. I just was doing the work,
Yeah, and what I like best is you said even the judge had a little laugh.
Oh,
I
yeah.
forget the name of the judge, but so
Sure.
yeah, good stuff. And like you said, all told, 4 fires over 2.5 years or so.
Well, in just about 2 years,
2 years.
264 building fires. We didn't even count the dumpsters and stuff. So they did a few hundred dumpsters, I'm sure, too, in the project.
Yeah. So fascinating book, and you and I have been going back and forth on email and things, and I wanted to ask you, and it was kind of stupid, but I noticed some similarities, very broad, to the plot of the movie Backdraft. Now, folks who don't know, Backdraft, set in Chicago, there's firefighters, they're going to all these fires, it's kind of getting crazy. Bottom line is the one guy, character Axe, and he gets mad at the alderman, played by the guy who shot himself in the movie A Few Good Men. I forget his name. But the whole point is because the alderman was like cutting funds and skimming off the top because they were closing firehouses. But in our communications, you said, yeah, there was no connection to that plot.
Right. They didn't base the book on the Boston story, to my knowledge, still. I actually watched the movie 2 nights ago again just to refresh my memory on the thing.
Yeah.
And, they had fatalities in those, very dramatic for movies. By the way, we are trying to get a movie on this.
I was going to ask that, so please go ahead. My next question, are you thinking of making a movie? So talk about that.
Back in the fall, I had a producer from LA contact us. No further contact since, but it's still out there. They showed the interest right away. And then there is a man in Boston who owns a production company out of New York. And we've had 2 meetings that got canceled because of other issues, sort of like you and I canceled once.
Yeah.
But he is very interested in possibly a movie on this, and he has a production company that's looked at it. And we tried to schedule another meeting, but then the virus came.
Yeah.
So it looks good. I mean, I'm looking for maybe a 6 to 8 part miniseries.
Yeah.
And then my second book, which I'm writing right now, would be the second season.
There you go. You can get a whole thing on Netflix. By the way, again, I was going to ask you because it make a great movie. It reads like that. So in the movie, who would play you? You could pick. And by the way, I have to ask this. I know this is stupid. Has anyone ever told you look like the My Pillow guy a little bit? Just a little bit.
I can see that.
My
I can
Pillow.
see it.
You put a cross around your neck and you cuddle some Giza sheets.
Yeah, I could do that.
Dead Ringer, maybe he could be the guy. But wouldn't that be cool if you actually get a movie going and you could say who gets to play you? It'd probably be someone like Tom Cruise or someone, back younger days, really cool action hero, right?
It has to be somebody who's still in his 30s, because I was in my 30s back then when this happened. So,
well, I tell you, if it becomes a movie, I'm certainly going to watch it. One more question before we start to wrap up. I just want a general question, and this really isn't about the book. You kind of talked about it, but based on your expertise, because I got curious. Arson investigation in general. How's it kind of changed from the early days when you were involved in the late 80s, early 90s to today? Like, what sort of changed in that? Because we all sort of picture the grisly guy, again, going back to Backdraft, Bob De Niro, sniffing things and purposely lighting a fire to see where it goes. But just how's it changed over the years?
Before I answer that, I got to tell you, I actually did a fire scene investigation at Robert De Niro's New York City apartment.
Really?
Back just a few years ago. He had 2 stories on Central Park West, and he had a really pretty bad fire in that building. So it's kind of ironic that this guy from that movie had that fire in his house. So back in the early 80s, when I started in this business, I learned it from the older grizzly De Niro type of guys.
Sure.
And they passed out, look at this fire pattern here and look at this. But there was no real science behind what they did. That was passed down from a generation before to them. Mm-hmm. And as the 90s came, there ended up being some really great books put together by people in the industry.
Yeah.
And we were held to these standards. And the science, we started joining with places like the University of Maryland, who had fire scientists.
Okay, yeah.
And they worked with us. So now we looked at appliances, and we saw how one burned with gasoline and how one burned accidentally, because we actually took the components out of a coffee maker that protected it from going to thermal, what we call thermal runaway.
Right, right.
And so we watched one burn because of an accidental electrical, and we set one on fire intentionally next to it, and we made comparisons. So there's a lot of science now behind what fire investigators do, where it wasn't like that in the early 80s.
Yeah, it used to just be more experience, and I just kind of know from what I've done. But now you've done a lot more science to figure it out. Fascinating stuff. Wayne, if you are a fan of the show, and I know you watch the clip show, you know we do something with all our guests. You know, no matter how famous you are, a famous guy, we like to play, ready, Danny?
Oh, yeah.
A little game called What's Your Favorite Sandwich? And now it's time for What's Your Favorite Sandwich? With your host, Mick Donato.
I'm ready.
So, if you don't know how this works, Danny, he's been listening to the interview. He's going to start draw. He has to draw it. I don't know why. He's going to guess what your favorite sandwich is. So what you have to do is just kind of think about it, and don't say like, "Oh, I like Stromboli from, Mixed Deli on 4th Street," or whatever. Make it general. But that's what we're going to do. And for those who don't know, What's Your Favorite Sandwich is sponsored by SandwichForYou.com. Great sponsor, especially in these days. You go online, you order, and they deliver your sandwich hot and fresh by drone directly to your doorstep in the patented Sandy Wrap packaging. And you don't have to touch anyone, which is great. So that's how it works. So, Danny, how's it going?
I'm almost done.
Almost done. All right. So it's been a great interview so far, sir. We're going to wrap up really, really soon. But do you know what your favorite sandwich is? I'm going to ask you in a second. Got it ready?
Taste it. I can taste it right now.
Danny, about there?
Almost.
Almost. You can hear him. You can hear him drawing. So, ready?
Yes.
All right. Here we go.
I dropped my
Hold on. Danny.
I dropped my marker.
Hold on. All right. Wayne Miller, former special agent with the ATF, now author, an all-around great guy. What is your favorite sandwich?
Hot pastrami, Swiss cheese.
Hot pastrami. What'd you guess, Danny?
Hot pastrami.
Show
I was
us.
not close at all.
Show the Danny can.
I got the cheese part right.
What is it?
I said the bacon, egg, and cheese on an English muffin from McDonald's.
All right, bacon, egg, and cheese and an English muffin. So you lose, unfortunately. But I tell you, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call a sandwich for you and order a hot pastrami. That sounds fantastic.
I love it.
I'm going to wrap up, sir. I know you're a busy guy. burnbostonburn.com. That's the website. Get all your info there. But I know there's links. Where can people get the book?
Well, I just found it on both Target and Walmart the other day. I couldn't believe it, they were carrying the book.
Oh, they have it in the store?
No, it'll be online.
Oh, online. Okay.
Amazon has it, but my website, if you want me to sign your book, you can get it from my website. I personally sign them and put it in the envelope and mail it to you.
Oh, listen to that. That's awesome. So burnbostonburn.com. Again, you can get the Audible version. And I know you're writing a second book you mentioned. Can't wait for that to come out. It's kind of a sequel, or at least sort of the next steps. Is this a different thing?
It's short stories, Mick. It's going to be bombing cases that I worked on. Like,
Okay.
for instance, a 50-year-old guy is dating a woman out in western New York, and the family doesn't like him. So he concocted this thing to build multiple bombs and have them delivered to each family member. And he actually killed a couple of the family. This is real life. Because I want to get rid of the family so I can comfort this woman, I tried to kill her entire family.
It's crazy stuff.
So
I'm sure that'll comfort her. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll tell you this, if you need a narrator, your next book,
I love your voice. I love your voice.
Just saying. Obviously. Real quick, anything else to plug? I know that you've had a lot of engagements, canceled because of the corona. But anything else? You got some other podcasts you're coming up on? Any interviews you want people to know about?
Behind the Shields, just the podcast was actually yesterday, but it's recorded. So it's going to be put out in Florida.
Yep.
I'm going to be on a radio program down in Florida soon. I'm putting that stuff on my social media and website. I also donate 50% of my profits to fire victim charities.
Oh, God bless you, sir.
Wow.
That is awesome. That is awesome. So, thank you so much. Again, the book is Burn, Boston, Burn, written by former ATF Special Agent Wayne Miller. It's amazing. It's a great read. A lot of history, but a lot of just, great reading. Like I said. So, go get it. Check out his website, burnbostonburn.com. Order it. Get an Audible, however you want. Anything else you want to add, sir, before we let you go?
I appreciate you doing this for me, bud.
You bet,
You
sir.
take
We'll
care.
talk to you soon. Take care.
Take care of yourselves.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Danny,
Wow.
that was pretty cool, huh?
Yes, that was. He said like he was one of the very few people in the country that was.
Yeah.
I forget.
Danny was up late last night, a little slow, but he's one of the few. But he was on that investigation. It's fascinating to read. Again, you have to get it, folks. We're going to wrap up now. Thanks so much for watching. The plug's on the screen, but of course, we want to give special thanks to all those emergency responders, right?
All right, yeah.
Those who are keeping us safe. Who are they, Danny?
Fire,
Hazmat.
law enforcement, narcotics,
Military,
Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines,
Coast
We
Guard, include the Coast Guard. Was Border Patrol,
Border Patrol, 3-letter agencies, especially CDC.
CDC, keeping us safe, and ATF.
Oh yeah, that.
But all of them, yeah.
All of them.
Special.
But especially CDC.
Special thanks to Wayne. That was a great interview.
Oh, yeah.
And again, we're going to keep doing whatever we can, if nothing else, maybe to entertain the folks out there, but keep looking for opportunities to support, raise awareness, raise money, whatever we can do. So, Danny, any final thoughts? Quickly.
Stay safe and don't die.
Stay safe and don't die. Words of wisdom. Thank you so much, folks. We'll see you next time. Take care. This has been the Mick Donato Show.